In this video, we're going to explain the bug out bag, how to pack it, what to put into it. We're going to explain where to store your gear. We're going to talk about other gear that you should take when you leave during an emergency. And then we're going to finish with a quick note about vehicles and pets. So let's start off with the initial question of what is bugging out? There may come a time when you need to leave your home quickly due to an emergency that's really outside of your control. At the core of bugging out is having the gear needed to survive for 72 hours if you had to leave your home. Now, bugging out is really the last option. You may have no choice in the matter. For example, a few years ago in Colorado, there was a fire that swept through a community in mere minutes, destroying homes. Those people had no choices. So what we'll do is in this video, we're going to go into the gear in extensive detail. I'm not going to go into a lot of the other bug out concepts such as vehicles, where to go, caching, other subjects that are on this. I created a separate playlist, which I'll link to up in the cards above, that will go into that. This video will primarily focus on the gear that you should have on hand, primarily the bug out bag. If at any time during the video you have any feedback, please post it below because I learned so much from the community. This video is actually a revised video based on some feedback from a bug out video that I did several years ago. I learned a lot from you guys. So let's go ahead and jump in. So when we talk about the bug out bag, the first thing that always comes up is weight. What you want to do is go no more than 25% of your overall body weight. Let's say you weigh 100 pounds. 25 pounds would be a lot. That would be where you want to cut it off. If you weigh 200 pounds, 50 pounds is where we want to cut it off. Obviously, the lighter, the better. Every ounce becomes a pound as you begin to hike further and further distance. The stuff that you need to access, what we want to do is we want to make that accessible. I'll show in a second things like flashlights or medical gear I have at the top where I can easily get a hold of it. I don't have to dig around. Things that I don't necessarily need throughout the day, sleeping bag, that's at the very bottom. So the other thing too is when you pack this, you want the heavy items closest to your back. So inside of my bag, I've got a bladder in the back. I'll pull that out in a minute. And I've got some different heavier items. I push those more toward my back. We don't want to get those out to the front or up on the top. Especially, again, we don't want them out here because that's just going to pull us back. We want to keep heavy items closer to our back. And again, the stuff that you need or that you don't need to access, put that at the very bottom. The other thing that you'll notice as I open up this bag is I put everything in a Ziploc bag or garbage bags. I want to keep them from getting wet, and it also helps things stay organized. These bags and the ones behind me, if we have to leave, I'm going to throw them into either my Jeep or my van. My Jeep is a Gladiator, so it's got an open space in the back, and it could get wet. So I keep everything internally in its own separate bag to keep it dry. I do have a backpack cover in the bottom that I'll talk about in a moment, but still everything needs to stay dry internally. Other thing is be sure to check your bags every 6 months, put a notification in your calendar, check your electronics or other things like food or medical gear. Let me also mention there is no perfect bag. You need to base it specific to your location. Where I live, it doesn't get terribly cold, but it's rather very, very dry. So I've got water storage options. I've got hydration multipliers, sunscreen. These are all things that are very important for me. It doesn't get terribly cold, but I do have sleeping bags. I've updated these for the winter. We're in the middle of our cold season. And so if I live somewhere colder, I'd have a lot more cold weather gear, but that's just not critical for me. So let's go into the discussion about what's in our bags. Now, the first question that inevitably is going to come up is security. I talk about that on my checklist hanging behind me. I make sure that the firearms are securely stored, and if we have to head out, I know where they are and be able to grab them quickly. Now, bags are not required. You can use something like a storage bin, a tote. I wouldn't recommend that because if you're out on foot and you have to flee, it's going to be difficult. But as you can see, I do have storage containers behind me for additional gear. The point of this bag is to keep you alive for 72 hours. So you want to think that through. What would you need for 72 hours? All right, so let's go ahead and let me start opening this up and go through it. I tell you what, let me actually just start with the top pouch here on the top and show you the items that I have inside. I'm going to switch and flip this over so you can see it. All right, so let me open up the top pouch. Now, what you want are things that are easily accessible. I've got some bars that, if I'm out hiking, I can just quickly reach those and grab those quickly. And again, everything that I'm going to cover, I'll post links in the description section to that below to a spreadsheet. The biggest one is a flashlight. I keep that readily available, so if it's nighttime, I can grab that and I know what I need. I've got some cash. I've got a chem light. I've got some notepads. I've got a compass. And I've got a map of my local area. That's important. Whenever you go to get a map, don't get a state map or something. You're not going to be hiking across your state. try to find, like at your AAA, a local map for your area. I've got a signaling mirror, a whistle, and a Write in the Rain pen with a Write in the Rain notepad there. Also, I've got a Leatherman pocket knife, and again, as you notice, I keep everything in Ziploc bags. It just helps keep it dry and organized. And this last item is a light, so that if we're out at night and we're hiking, you know, on the road or something and we don't want to get hit, you know, we have that option to make sure that we're highly visible. All right, so what I'll do now is show you what is in this top compartment. Every bag is different. This is just the way this one's organized. I've got the pouch at the top. I just went through that. I've got a compartment here, and then I've got all the main stuff in the main bay. So let me open up and show you the items in here. Hopefully this will work on this camera view. Move it over here. Now the first thing I have is a fixed blade knife. This is the knife from Survival Lily. I love this thing. She sent it to me a while back. This one is a radio, a hand crank radio, so you can, you know, obviously understand what's going on with the weather, the news. I've also got various USB chargers so that you can hand crank and charge your cell phones as you need to. I've got a survival blanket here on the back, of Mylar, and then this is a bivvy so that, you know, I can wrap my sleeping bag with that if I need to. Now, right here, I've got a couple of communication devices. I'll put these here in the camera that you can see them up close. I've got a ham radio. I have my license. I did a video on that a few months ago. I highly advise you to check that out. I've got a mini Garmin. Is it mini Garmin? Gosh, I forget what the name of these are. But anyway, essentially this allows you to send and receive text messages via satellite. And then it also has GPS functionality, which is incredibly useful. I've got a Shemagh. Always mispronounce that. It's basically a bandana that I got when I was overseas and can be used for a lot of purposes. A pair of leather work gloves, so that is for handling whatever or doing whatever. I'm not messing up my hands. And then I've got these documents in here with pictures of my family members. I've got you know, information as to where we go if we get separated, contact information of individuals that call out of state. It's one of the important things that you have to consider is have a collective phone number that you can call of individuals out of state so that if you get split up, everybody can call to that person. All right, so that is this particular bay right here. Now you'll notice that I kind of broken these all up into, you know, different items. And again, I'll post the links to everything in the description section, to a spreadsheet where I'll explain all this by category. But if you have these items, you're basically going to be covering the main categories. So let me open up the main section of this bag here. And I'll slide this over to this camera so you can see. Now, does it look super pro, but I got it in a garbage bag. And again, as I explained, if we had to head out quickly and any of this got wet, I just want this all to stay dry. At the time of recording, it's very cold outside, so I've got a fleece. I've got a windbreaker, rain outside, you know, jacket. And then I've got a knee brace for my knee, which has torn meniscus, hooray. And so that takes care of that. Let me pull out these next items. Now, you can't see behind me, but I've got my boots up here, and I keep a pair of socks in that so that if I, you know, grab the boots, I can just quickly grab the socks. But of course, you always want to keep a backup pair of socks so that if the first ones get wet, you'll be fine. And then I've got some fleece, or rather, excuse me, thermals for top and bottom. Again, it's cold outside. If in the summertime, I would probably remove a lot of this stuff to drop the weight of the bag. Speaking of which, and I'll talk about this in a second, I do periodically check these about every 6 months. So some of the gear I would remove based on the time of the year. These are a pair of pants. I've got a pair of underwear and a pair of shirt in here. Let me keep going here. I've got a solar panel to charge our different devices. This is a 28-watt solar panel, and I can actually, you know, plug in the different devices that I need to charge, cell phones or other gear. All right, so here's our first set of food. We got MREs. A lot of people always tell me open these up, strip out some of the items. Probably need to go back and do that. I've got a bag here with a lot of different items, and let me just go ahead and open this up and explain this really quickly. I've got paracord. I believe, I want to say it's 100 feet. This is survival paracord, actually. I've got my toiletries, got wipes, toilet paper. For water issues, or rather, hydration, these are called hydration multipliers. Again, where I live, it gets really hot and dry, so Has a lot of salt, electrolytes, sugar, that kind of stuff, and then electrolyte tablets. I've gotten dehydrated severely before, and heat exhaustion is no bueno. And then I've got, these are called Zip Fizz, and they're a source of energy. You just put them in water. I use those instead of coffee. They're vitamin B12. Our mini Sawyer water filter, some water tablets to purify our water, or rather, get rid of anything in there that I don't want that's living. This is my fire kit. I've got a lighter. I've got, matches, wet fire. I've got my ferrocerium rod. I've got a phenol lens that you can use to start things. So a lot of different options. Got a towel, kind of a swimmer's towel. So if I get wet or anything, I can dry off. Let's see. Got some other basic toiletries, soap, chapstick, a toothbrush, some antiseptic wipes, toothpaste, floss. And, it's a little things like that. Some morale boosters, right? You want to keep your hygiene in order. Got duct tape, or rather Gorilla Tape, excuse me, some zip ties. And then I've got the Silcock key. If you live in an urban environment, you'll notice on the side of businesses, you'll have those weird faucets without a knob, that they'll have those little weird shapes. This is the key that will open those up. Okay, so keep moving on here. This was actually, it fell down when I opened the bag, or it didn't fall down, but it fell inside the kit. I keep this on the top. This is my med kit. I won't open this up for the sake of time, but it's got a lot of the basic, your boo-boo stuff, your Israeli bandage, just other important things. Again, I'll put a link to that in the description if you want to see the full breakdown of that. When it comes to some more food, what I do is I try to keep a couple thousand calories per day. And if you'll notice the food that I have in here, none of it requires any type of cooking. That reduces my need to carry fuel or any type of stoves. It helps me, just basically, these are not things that I would want to eat for a long time, but this is, I believe, 3,600 calories. Is it more than that? I have to go through. I know I did the math on these. I want to say I'm around about 2,500 calories per day, which if you're hiking, that's the bare minimum. You really want more than that, but we're trying to consider weight here. The other item that I have in here is a rain fly. And as I explained in the gear that's behind me on the shelf, we do have a tent. If we bugged out, once I pull out some of the gear that I need to put on the clothing, it would free up space in the bag, and I can break that tent apart, separate it up between myself, my wife, and my kids. But for now, these bags were just so stuffed I couldn't get those tents in there because I just wanted everything on the ready. This is a sleeping sleeping pad that you can, fill up with air, and that will keep you off the ground when you're sleeping at night. There is a sleeping bag at the very bottom in here. And again, I keep this in a garbage bag for the reasons that I stated earlier. I know it's not pretty, but I just want to keep it dry so that if these bags do get wet when we're heading out of town, we'll be fine with that. And then inside, and I'll pull this out, in the very back, I can't pull it all out entirely because I get it all intertwined, but I've got a water bladder. This is a Camelback, 3 liters. So as I mentioned a moment ago, where I live, we don't have a lot of water. So I'm always going to be looking for water that we can fill up as we go along. And then I've got on the side, I've got another liter Nalgene bottle. In some of the other bags, we've got Clean Canteen, water storage containers, so that if we have to heat water up, we can do that, because obviously you're not going to put this over an open flame. And again, you might want to consider some type of metal canteen that you would have in your bag, and that's one of the other bags. A lot of people also recommend storing different gear in here. I chose not to because I could get everything to fit in the main compartment, but it just also opens up some more storage space. So the other bags that are behind me, they all have a lot of the similar items and categories. There's a lot of redundancy across our bags. The old saying, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So if there's any kind of problem with any of the gear, we do have redundancy and backup options. So I'll also, again, put a link to the spreadsheet below, our kids' bags, and it has in the spreadsheet all of the items per bag. And you can see the way I did it. When I went to the bags and items we have columns where I marked if something's missing, and then I have its own tab in the spreadsheet that if there's an item I need, I put it over there, I bought it, and then I could identify which column in that spreadsheet, which, I define which bag is missing the gear so I can put it in there. It's important that if you are pulling gear for any reasons that you always mark it in some type of spreadsheet so that you can go back and where are those items. So I would highly encourage you to check out that sheet. It has one for each one of our family members, a tab. And for my daughter, who's only 5, she's not going to be carrying much, so we basically keep her food and clothing and some miscellaneous toys, and that's about it. It's in a small bag behind me. So that, in a nutshell, is our setup. If you have any feedback, let me know. In this part of the video, we're going to cover 4 things. We're going to go over a checklist, labeling your gear. We'll talk about climate and rodents when you consider where you put your gear. And then we'll end up discussing the actual bags behind me. I'll pull them down so you can see those and the gear, how I have everything stored, and I'll explain the logic behind it. So let me start off with a checklist. This checklist that I have hanging behind me enables me to understand, did I grab everything if we head out? And I've also got it prioritized by colors. So I'll grab the checklist, I'll show it to you real quick, and I'll post a link to it below. Please do not turn this part of the video into a drinking game that every time I turn around you see my bald spot, you take a shot, but here we go. All right, so I've got my checklist, and I'll show this here in the camera. What you'll notice is everything is by colors. So at the top, I've got red, I've got yellow in the middle, and then I've got green. In a second, I'm going to show you all of the labels, and I think this is a good part to segue into, is the actual labels that I put on all of the equipment. And let me explain why I chose what I did. The first one is red. Now, this one's based on priority. These are the items that are just critical, the bags that we would carry if we actually had to walk out or jump in our car very quickly, if we just maybe even had a minute at best. Now, what it is you'll notice these have red tags on them. I've got shoes. I've also got a bucket that I can grab that has food in it. Also outside of frame, I'll record some B-roll shotage of this. But below me, I've got a wagon. I've got some water that we could grab because none of these bags have water in them right now. They all have containers that I would fill up. And then I've got some self-recovery gear for my Jeep. I've got a jack along with a shovel because my Jeep can go off-roading, so I want to make sure I have self-recovery gear. Now, these are all items that are stored within one area. Again, if we just had to run out and we just maybe had 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute, we would just grab everything. And these bags, as y'all show you in another part of the video, they already have the clothes, so they're designed to just be able to quickly grab and go. Now, in the second part right here, you'll notice there's a good chunk of products, or rather items, that are yellow. The yellow items are items that are really nice to have, but they're not critical. They would be, let's just say, very, very convenient to have, especially in my vehicle. And then at the very end are a few items that I consider green. Now you'll notice that there's only one green here. There's an item that's up here. And then I've got a few that are mixed in here that are green, some fuel, and one other item. Now again, the logic behind this is based on priority and time. The items that are critical, it kind of goes from this side is super critical, and then we go a little more like, well, not as critical, but I definitely need everything down there. So what I'll do is I'm going to take and I'm going to grab each one of these items. We'll edit the video so that you're not having to watch me pull each one of these items, but let me explain these one at a time. So let me explain the items here that we have. Again, everything that is priority is over here. So this is my personal bug out bag. This is one of my son's backpacks right here. This is my wife's backpack. This is the gear for my daughter. I don't think she would actually ever carry it because she's so small. I might switch it out to a different bag, but we basically keep her clothes and food in here. This is my other son's backpack. And again, I've got everything pretty much stored away in there for him. Now, as you notice, we're still down to a few red items. I've got my personal boots, and then I've got my wife's boots right here. And again, our kids' shoes are inside the house, so we have an area where we keep all our shoes, so we just go in there and make sure we grab those. Another critical item would be food. This is mostly freeze-dried food. There's some MREs and a few energy bars in here. But again, I've got the red tag, as you can see on there, and this is just something a Pell that we would grab to go. And the last item on the shelf that is red is a tent. Now you may be asking, why don't you have the tent in your backpacks? A lot of our backpacks already have so much clothing that we would pull out if we had to leave. I would break the tent apart and break it across the different bags, but we can just quickly grab this. And I chose to put our clothes in all of our bags that we would wear when we would leave, so we're not having to scramble around to put clothes on. But as we pull it out, there'll be a lot of room left over in the bags. We would just simply take this apart, break it down, and then throw it into the bags as needed. So I'm squatting down here on the floor, and as you can see, all the items that I just pulled off are right above, but these are the items down below that I would throw in the vehicle. This is a collapsible wagon that we can open up. Our daughter's very young. We would probably put her in there if we had to go for any distance, plus any other gear that we would need. I've got water here. These are 5 gallons each, so there's 4 of them, so that comes out to about 160 pounds. Now, obviously, we wouldn't be physically carrying that, but we would throw that in the vehicles. I've got these self-recovery tracks that I could lay down in the sand or mud if my Jeep got stuck. And then over here, I've got a hijack and also have a shovel. Again, self-recovery gear that's critical for a vehicle, specifically for mine for going off-roading. So let's talk about the yellow labeled gear. What is this? These, again, are items that are important, but are not critical. Now, the items that I consider important, as you can see behind me, are solar panels. These go with the Jackery. Again, I can just simply grab those. There's 6 of them in total for 1,200 watts. A lot, obviously. And now I've got some green items mixed in here, but again, not a problem. We'll just slide these items over and we'll talk about these in just a moment. All right, so back to yellow. As you can see here, I've got a toolkit, and I did a video on this. I'll put a link up in the cards above to this. This is a portable kit with different important tools that you would need. The next item is a solar generator. This is a Jackery 2000 Pro. I've done a review on this. Jackery is very popular with the overlanding community. I've got a Jeep. It's just they're light enough, they're powerful enough to provide a lot of useful power. So this one to me would be very important. I've got all of the cords for the solar panels here in this particular bag that I keep strapped onto it. Now, for the next items that I have is a toilet kind of hygiene kit. We've got the toilet paper. In this container right here, I've got the lids that go on top of buckets. When I've gone camping, it's very useful to have bags and a bucket and a toilet lid to go to the bathroom. And in here is a porta-well. I did a video, this is on this about a year or 2 ago. It's a forced filtration system so that we could obviously collect more water if we came across it and filter it out so it's safe to drink. The next couple of items here in the yellow category is solo stove pots. We could use this to boil water or cook different food as needed. I've got a actual solo stove with a tripod so that you can hang this over the fire. Next is the annex that goes on the rooftop tent that I have on my Jeep. My Jeep is set up with a Roam tent. I can set, I believe, 3 or 4 people inside, and then this add-on on the side allows me to build an annex so I can put 2 additional people inside. So we have a family of 5, so this is why I keep this on standby. The next 2 items in the yellow category are some tools. The first one up is a Silky Katana, I believe 650. I've had this for several years, and since I don't carry a chainsaw, if we get in a position where we need to process wood, I would have that along with a Fisker's axe. The next item that's labeled yellow, and I've got this taped on here, is my Starlink satellite. This allows me to obviously connect up to the satellite to get high-speed internet. For me, having communication, especially if we have to bug out, no matter where we are, combined with the solar generator, I can keep up to date and communicate with people no matter where we are. The next big container up that's labeled yellow is this Roam storage container. Inside, I've got different trauma kits, bleed kits. I've got additional food. There's a lot of other important survival gear that's in here that doesn't fit in inside of any other items, but I would definitely want to have if we had to bug out. Now, the last big kit item that I have that's marked yellow is mask. Where I live, we have a lot of fires. That would probably be the most likely scenario that would force us out of our home. So I want to have these on standby and ready to go. I've got your traditional N95 mask just for respiration to filter out particulates, the different smoke that we may deal with, pair of goggles. I've got way more advanced masks, obviously, that also are rated for chemical, biological, radioactive. So I think we're kind of covered. We've got all the filters that are necessary 40 millimeter screw-on mask, or filters, excuse me. And I've got one for each family member, including our children. So we're definitely covered on that. And again, out of all the scenarios that we would probably face, forcing us out of our home, fire would be the most likely. So let me cover the green items. Green labeled items are items that are not critical, but they would be really nice to have. The first one is a propane tank. That would be useful, obviously, to power our Mr. Heater. Right now, at the time of recording this video, it is very cold outside, so having this would be very useful inside of our tent. I've got this tent, essentially. It's what we would use over our toilet system. Again, not critical, but very nice to have for a little privacy when you got to do the do. And then this last item is a lot of cooking and kind of comfort items. I'll show what's inside of this. If you have any ideas of what you would recommend I put inside, feel free to let me know. This is a kind of an afterthought kit that I'll be working on probably over the next few weeks, but we'd love to get your comments. So let me show you what's inside. Let me say a quick note about climate and rodents. I keep these bags in the garage during the summer fully loaded with the food and medicine. But during the summer, when it gets warm in this area, I'll pull all that out. I do that for two primary reasons. Number one, heat will impact the longevity of food and medicine. It will quickly, well, it will reduce the lifespan of it very quickly. Secondly, when it gets hot in my garage in the summer, I have a side door that I leave open that goes into a secure courtyard. And I just want to be able to vent this part of the house off, otherwise it gets incredibly hot. So we have a door that goes into our house, and in that area we've got a storage area that I can put these items. So whenever that comes summertime, I will update that checkout list to make sure that we know whenever we're leaving, we got to grab the food and the medicine that we've got to add it on. We'll have that in their own standalone bags that we can pull and then dump into the main bags once we head out. But it's important that you factor in the climate and you consider rodents, because rodents, if they smell food, they'll go after this. So think those things through whenever you consider how you're going to store your items, or rather where you're going to store, because you have to factor those two items in. So let me show you what's in this first storage bin that I marked as important. I had two storage bins on the shelf. This one's important. The other one is nice to have, but not critical. So as you can see here, when we flip up the lid, hopefully that's in frame, you can see I've got a few different things that are strapped on here. I've got a pair of gloves. I've got a light so that if I open this, you know, I can see in here very quickly. I've got a hatchet. And so those are the basic items there. All right, so let me start pulling items outside of the kit. We'll take a look at these. Now the first item is a DJI drone. I forget which one this is. I got it years ago. Why a drone? Well, I've been in situations where I've been out in the middle of nowhere and you get lost. If you have a drone, you can pop up, you can see where you're at very quickly. Also from an intel perspective, you can quickly get out and see what's beyond you. Now, if you'll notice also at the very top, I've got a bleeding control kit. This is from Refuge Medical. Highly recommend this thing. I love carrying this in most of my bags when I'm out and about. Definitely high quality gear. This one is a, who manufactures this? Hybrid Light, solar powered. You can charge it during the day with solar, and then it's just a lantern, you know, and you can charge it as well via the USB plug-in on the side. And you can charge other devices off that too. So kind of serves a lot of cool functions. Here is another medical kit. Sorry, I might have to stand up for this one and reach it and get that out. Some friends of mine, I've done reviews on this before. I believe this is from Doom and Bloom Medical. It's kind of like a Navy Corpsman medical kit, trauma kit. It's got a lot of great items inside. I've got a rain, we're in the rain season, so if I get out and actually do some work, just a poncho. Let me see what else is on this other side. What do we have? Oh, yep, Katadyn water filter. I did a trip on the Colorado River last year in 2022. Carried that with it, awesome. Never got sick once. All right, well, I should be pulling some of these items out. Now, I've got a lot of Mountain House freeze-dried food. One of the buckets that we carry that's behind me, it's full of that. But again, just can't hurt to carry as much food. Now, I know this originally was designed, the concept of bugging out, you got to prepare it for 72 hours, but I could, you know, with the food and the water and the filtration systems, we could stay out for probably several weeks without any major issues. Wouldn't be fun, but we could do it. Just a lot of different Mountain House items here. I'm not going to pull them all out. I've got, and they keep coming. So let's see, I've got several more in here. I'm not going to grab those. I'll just leave those there. Now I've got another silky saw. This is probably one of my favorites. And I love the way it's, it's bowed when I've cut wood with this. Just the way it's, the angle on that, I can really cut through things pretty quickly. Definitely enjoy using that one. I've got the lid to, remember earlier one of the buckets behind us is our toilet kit. So this is the actual lid that just goes on the top of it. It just makes life easier when you have this. Obviously you can dig a hole in the ground and do your business, but it's nice having a little creature comfort, right? And then I've got additional bags that go inside of the toilet. Again, the kit that we're using, you just drape these inside of your 5-gallon bucket, put the lid on top, and you are set. Let me see, what else have I got in here? Nothing over there. And then I've got, let me pull this out here. I've got a wool blanket. I've got several more Mountain House freeze-dried meals in there, but this is a wool blanket, actual wool. And again, based on the season that we're in right now, I just want as much warm weather gear that we have. So that's the items that I have inside of the important container that I would want to take if we had a bug out. So this is the second container. Remember, this one was marked with green, so it's not a critical, it's a nice to have, but not critical for an emergency situation. Now this one, I'll be honest, it's a work in progress. I've kind of thrown a few miscellaneous items in here, but if you have feedback or thoughts saying, hey, this is what I would do with the second container, because it's about half full. I'm probably going to take this on as a project over the next few weeks and flesh it out. But I think there's a few things that are important. I'll name a few here. There's a couple of camp chairs. If we're out for a prolonged period of time, just having some chairs would be nice to have, to be able to sit down and, kick up your feet. So nothing wrong with that. Again, not critical for survival, but nice to have. The next one is just trash bags. Again, dealing with different sanitary issues, whatever. I mean, trash bags have so many applications. You can think of a lot of things for that. The next one is a, that's not good. A fuel hose that goes from the 5-gallon, or rather 8-pound, fuel propane tank. This one is a hose that you can connect up to the Mr. Heater. And as I'll show you in a second, I'll pull out a stove that I have here. This is straps that you can secure to a tree, so that you can hang up a hammock. Again, just to relax in, sleep in. There's a lot of options with a hammock. The next one is just I believe 1 quart, 20 ounces Stanley, just water container here that you can cook with. I've also got inside, I've got soap and a sponge and a small little spatula. So for just cleaning up, be super useful for that. The next one in here is just a small screw-on propane. This will go on your Mr. Heater. And this one here that I'm about to pull out, let me stand up. Miraculously, this fit right in the bottom like a glove. I think that's it inside of it, yeah. So this is just a camp stove that I've had going on about 15 years, like your typical Coleman stove, So you can cook and do other things with that. And that's it. This is what I have in the second container. Not necessarily critical items. A lot of these, especially like stoves and other things, I've got redundancy in the other kits, but these just make life a little easier. If you have ideas for what you would add in here or additional items or change out altogether, let me know. Bug out vehicle. A quick note about bug out vehicles. I'll do a breakout video on this subject matter a little more in the future, but while we're on the subject of bugging out, let's discuss a few points here. The first thing is the best vehicle for bugging out is the one that you have. It's easy to think, well, if I had this vehicle, if I had this one, things would be really great if I had a bug out. But just consider the fact that the goal is to be able to get away in an emergency situation to whatever destination that you're trying to get to. So the other thing that to consider when we talk about bug out vehicles is that you want to keep the bags like we have here behind me and the other gear in an accessible area that you can quickly load your vehicles if you had to head out. Again, I talked about climbing a rodent, so obviously store it where it makes most sense for you. But our garage door is right here. I typically have my Jeep right here, so I would just have to pull it forward a little. I could toss everything in, and out we would go. Now, as far as your vehicles go, you really want to make sure that you can maintain. You want to always, at a minimum, keep your tank at half full. I always get paranoid if it goes under half. I typically even fill it up when it's a quarter low. And then also you want to make sure that it's obviously ready to go. Keep it maintained, as I said. And also make sure that you have self-recovery equipment, your jacks or any other thing that you would need if you break down, that you can take care of it yourself. Make sure your spare tires in working order. Now, when it comes to pets, I've done a whole breakout video. I'll post a link in the cards up above. But a few quick points is have food, a water bowl, have a leash or whatever, a small cage for your animal ready. Whatever the considerations are, think that through. Even having their documentation on vaccines. If you go into a shelter or a hotel, and they're maybe going to want to check that. Again, I'll post a link to a video that we did on bugging out with pets. So if you have any feedback or any questions on this video, please post that in the comments section below. And when I rebuilt the bags and a lot of the gear for this video, I actually took a lot of the feedback that you've given me over the years. So I do listen, and it's very helpful, and I hope I can give back to you, the community, as I learn from you guys. So I definitely welcome the feedback. I always enjoy constructive criticism. As always, stay safe out there.